Fox 61 News at 5 starts now.
And now at 5, Ian, a hurricane once again after devastating cities on the western coast of Florida. President Biden saying this might be one of the deadliest hurricanes in Florida's history. We'll look at its path of destruction and where it's headed next.
And Florida hospitals and nursing homes are moving patients out as floodwaters rise. Now, if a major disaster hit Connecticut, how prepared are our hospitals to respond? We'll take a look.
And powerful testimony continuing in the Alex Jones case. Why the star witness says Jones is putting on a show instead of telling the truth.
And more arrests are made in a double homicide, a drive-by shooting over the summer. More details tonight in this case.
And good evening, and thanks for joining us for the news at 5. I'm Brent Harden.
And I'm Sarah Sanchez. We're tracking Ian tonight as it continues on its path through Florida. Just moments ago, it was upgraded to a hurricane yet again.
Yeah, let's take a live look now from St. Augustine. That is a city just 30 miles southeast of Jacksonville. And take a look at how strong the winds are, whipping the ocean on the east coast.
And a similar scene in Jacksonville. Here you go, a city that isn't seeing the worst of Ian's impact, but they're still seeing strong winds and flooding in some parts of the city.
All day today, we've been getting a look at the devastation of towns on the western coast of Florida, directly where the hurricane first made landfall. Here's a look at a beach before and then after disaster struck.
In Fort Myers, debris is littered everywhere. Take a look at this. Some buildings completely reduced to piles of rubble. At first, Ian looked like it was originally on track to strike Tampa Bay. It changed course. It hit just under 100 miles south of there.
Yeah, I was taking a look from the air. You can really see the extent of the damage. Some are calling Fort Myers ground zero of Ian's wrath. Millions of people currently without power, and President Biden has issued a disaster declaration there in Florida, and he also says this may turn out to be one of the deadliest hurricanes in Florida's history.
Yeah, turning now to Chief Meteorologist Rachel Frink. So, Rachel, we've seen the damage Ian has inflicted so far. Now, as the storm has been upgraded yet again, so where is it heading?
This time it's headed to the shoreline of South Carolina. This storm doesn't know when to quit. This will be the third landfall for the hurricane. Number 1 was in Cuba. Number 2 clearly in southwest Florida. Seeing those images from Fort Myers gives me a physical reaction. It is so heartbreaking. And now, while this third landfall will not be as strong as the first two, I mean, not even in the same ballpark, it's still going to be a decent storm, and it's still going to bring damage, storm surge, and some strong winds for the shoreline of South Carolina. All right, new update in. So previously it was a tropical storm, Ian, with winds of 70 miles per hour. Now it has been upgraded, has 75 miles per hour winds, and that is enough for it to get that classification as a hurricane. The track has not changed. It is still expected to make that turn towards the north and then curve in towards the shoreline of South Carolina. Right now, the center of that track would take it right through Charleston, but it could be as far east as Myrtle Beach. It could be a little bit farther west. So keep in mind, you have to take the entire track into consideration. Unlike when the storm made landfall in Florida, the worst storm surge will be on the northern side of the storm's track. After that, it moves inland. It starts to weaken. Here's where the center of circulation is Saturday afternoon. So we're not expecting the remnant storm itself here in Connecticut during the day on Saturday, but we will get some impacts from Ian as tropical moisture streams north in the form of some rain heading into the weekend and more clouds during the day tomorrow. We'll talk about more impacts from Hurricane Ian on the southeast and here at home coming up.
All right, thank you, Rachel. The latest images out of Florida, as we just saw, reveal the devastation left behind by Hurricane Ian. The storm, as Rachel mentioned, sets its sights now on parts of Georgia and the Carolina coasts. Fox's Madeline Rivera reports from Tampa.
Forecasters expecting Ian to pick up strength as it enters the Atlantic before moving north towards Georgia and the Carolinas.
I'm in awe over such destruction. It just is horrible here.
Ian carving a path of destruction along Florida's Gulf Coast after making landfall Wednesday as a Category 4 hurricane. Now millions remain without power in Florida as search and rescue efforts are underway to help those who did not make it out in time.
If you need to be evacuated, step out of your front door.
FEMA calling the damage in areas like Fort Myers catastrophic, with President Biden saying Ian could be the deadliest storm in Florida's history. The president approving a major disaster declaration for Florida, freeing up aid for recovery efforts.
The federal government will cover 100% of the cost to clear debris and for all the costs that the state has to engage in and expend to save lives.
And as the storm makes its way out of the state, Central Florida has been slammed with flooding rains. Meanwhile, forecasters expect Ian to regain hurricane strength ahead of its second landfall along the Georgia and Carolina coastlines. People there preparing for life-threatening storm surges, flooding, and high winds.
Be weather aware of that and to take precautions now to keep you and your family safe.
The governors of Georgia, North and South Carolina have all issued a state of emergency. In Fort Myers, Florida, Malda Rivera, Fox 61 News.
Many healthcare facilities in Florida were evacuated in anticipation of a big blow from Hurricane Ian. A Connecticut-based healthcare emergency management consultant actually helped design Florida's disaster response plan for hospitals and long-term care facilities.
Fox 61's New Haven County Bureau reporter Tony Terzi joins us live from New Haven now with more on this story. Tony.
Guys, you're speaking about Scott Aronson of West Hartford, who in addition to working on the Florida plan, has also been a person who helped craft Yale New Haven Health's disaster response plan. This is Yale New Haven Hospital behind us here. And he says a decision to evacuate hospitals is not arrived at easily. A cornerstone of any healthcare facility's disaster evacuation plan must be patience, because it takes time.
We think of it as a couple hours. If I was evacuating Yale New Haven Hospital, that could be something you're talking about over the period of 18 to 24 hours.
And he says sometimes that time frame is pushed out to as many as 48 hours.
So know that all the emergency responders, their goal is to slow down an evacuation of a hospital unless the threat is internal, because you don't want to do things where you're moving patients and you're not prepared to handle them on the other side.
And evacuating patients in Florida is a gamble, he says.
We've seen it happen in many situations where in Florida, they've actually moved them, evacuated residents or patients to another hospital or nursing home, and then they get hit on the other side and their previous facility was okay.
Also okay, a Killingworth couple staying at their Fort Myers, Florida home when Ian roared ashore.
It was very, very scary. And then you hear roofs moving and metal and grinding and things falling, trees falling.
They were hunkered down on their horse farm about 14 miles from downtown Fort Myers.
For the most part, the roof on the main house stayed good. We lost some on the barns. That's all fixable.
And they say they'll stay close to their home because there is a curfew in place to discourage sightseeing.
We have a whole bunch of friends that are in Connecticut that want us to drive by their place and see how it performed.
Glad to see that Linda, Tim, and their beautiful horses are all doing well there in Fort Myers. Nice to have good news come out of there. As for Yale New Haven health officials, they say that it's not possible for this facility to be evacuated under most major storm circumstances because this serves as a level 1 trauma center to which patients from other healthcare facilities are brought. We're live in New Haven. Tony Terzi, Fox 61 News.
All right, Tony, thank you. And for the latest developments on Hurricane Ian or any breaking news, be sure to check out the Fox 61 News app. It is free, and you can download it using the QR code you see here on your screen. All right, today in the Alex Jones defamation trial, the plaintiff's attorneys continued testimony of their star witness,
Robbie Parker. Alex Jones repeatedly accused him of being an actor. Fox 61's Matt Karen brings us inside the courtroom to share Robbie's emotional journey fighting back. Matt.
Yeah, hi guys. Robbie Parker, as you mentioned, sat on the stand today and he explained through tearful eyes how for years he was distant, he was withdrawn. And he actually ran from Alex Jones and his Sandy Hook lies, but that's who Robbie Parker was then. It's not who he is today.
If you've got a school of 100 kids and then nobody can find them.
Alex Jones wasn't in the courtroom Thursday, but his presence was felt on the evidence screen.
When I just saw the heavy scripting, people clearly coming up and laughing and then doing the fake crying.
The main target of his Sandy Hook hoax conspiracy, Robbie Parker, the father of shooting victim Emily Parker.
I retreated every single time something happened to us.
He deactivated Emily's memorial Facebook page after hateful comments became unmanageable.
I felt like I couldn't protect Emily's name.
Moving to the other side of the country.
I was so ashamed in my belief that I had brought this on everybody.
But even 4,000 miles of separation and a new home didn't stop the Alex Jones mob.
And I see this video on YouTube of all of the county documents about the sale of our house, how much it cost, the address, basically following our steps.
The torment eventually jumping from the virtual world to the real one. A man recognized him on the sidewalk.
And he was looking at me and he said, "How do you sleep at night, Emily's alive, isn't she? She's alive, huh?" And I just kept walking and I turned around and I looked at him and finally I just said, "I don't owe you anything."
A turning point for Robbie, who has since counseled the families of the Parkland school shooting and started an art foundation to honor his daughter. He's done retreating.
I can fight this. I can stand up. And I don't need to be quiet anymore. And I can say something and I can fight this.
Robbie, is that why you've been looking forward to being here in this courtroom?
Exactly.
It was an early day for the jury. Testimony wrapped up by 1 p.m., but not before the jury heard more emotional comments from two other witnesses, the mother and the brother of Sandy Hook teacher Vicky Soto, who was also killed that day. Court is going to be back in session next Tuesday. Now, that's also when we may expect to see Alex Jones back on the stand once again. The judge also telling the jury today that they are still ahead of schedule in this case. Next week will likely be the last week that they will be hearing evidence before they have to make their decision on how much money to award the victims' families. We're live here outside Waterbury Superior Court. Matt Caron, Fox 61 News.
All right, Matt, thank you. It's also hard to listen to. A third arrest made in connection with a double homicide in Bridgeport. Police say 19-year-old Everton Brooks is set to be arraigned on murder charges. They say he confessed to driving the shooter that he and the accused shooter, driving the scooter, I should say, that he and the accused shooter drove away on. Now, this all happened in July on Fairfield Avenue. The victims, 18-year-old Casimir Dorsey of Bridgeport and 32-year-old Ramon Peguero from Hartford. Police hope Peguero was not the intended target. Two other arrests were made back in August.